Saturday Durban. This is the inaugural event for Durban here in South Africa, and I'm with Warren Marks. So it's one of the, so you run, are you a managing partner of the Johannesburg? What's the official title?
I'm Director of Johannesburg.
Director of Johannesburg for GTconsult. So one of the Metalogix and former Exceller partners as well. So we're down here at the event, and Warren just did a session talking about RBS, and so there's a number of different things and questions around that. The first thing I want to talk about is RBS essential to SharePoint? Do I have to go and use RBS?
Absolutely not. It's not essential, but it would be wise to any mature SharePoint environment to use the RBS technologies, and specifically product leveraging of that RBS API. The idea behind it is to reduce storage costs and be able to retain information for longer periods of time while reducing the cost overhead while doing so. Natively, SQL is a very expensive application to run. It requires fast disks to house that information, and over time, as your data volumes increase within your SharePoint environment, so your content databases bloat as well, which can be quite a high cost overhead.
And that's not just, when you're talking about organizations, it's not the number of end users that you might have within your organization that really drives the complexity of the content that's out there. You could have 50 people in an organization, but they're using like CAD files, so they're design files, or rich media, that they might have the need for this kind of.
Absolutely, and you mentioned CAD files, and it's quite interesting. There's actually two reasons around that. CAD files are generally quite large files, and you have a limit within SharePoint that is 2 gig in size. Certain products can get you around that limit, where should you have larger than 2 gig files like CAD documents, you can bypass your content databases and move directly into that BLOB offload by using the correct products to do so. So you're getting additional benefit by leveraging off BLOB offloading style products, then just reducing the size of your content databases.
So, and one of the questions that also came up today, because I asked it, was questions around the shredded storage.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about that, and I know that there's a lot of confusion out there about what it does, how shredded storage is impacted by, affected by, because if shredded storage, the big question people had out there was, does that do away with the need for RBS?
Absolutely not. So let's be clear on what shredded storage is and the drivers behind it. I like to look at documents that are being uploaded into SharePoint as puzzle pieces that get broken up once they get put into the content database. When you make a change to a document in earlier versions of SharePoint before shredded storage was around, it would have to create a whole new version, so that new document in its entirety would have to be housed within your content database. Shredded storage now allows for only the changes within that document to be stored. So if you upload a document within SharePoint and they change one small item, instead of the document in its entirety having to be restored, only the changes are stored. So when you have multiple versions of a document, essentially you're getting a form of deduplication on that single document. However, if that document is stored across several different sites, 7 copies of that document are still stored within that SharePoint environment, which still bloats the sizes of your content database. So yes, it's reducing the size and the storage requirements, but it's not completely doing away where you're getting true single instance storage across your SharePoint.
So it's not a one or the other, there is value in having it.
Absolutely.
And so you just need to make that part of your strategy, understand that capability, understand how they're working together.
Exactly.
Where you're using RBS.
And you can use both. You might not want to offload everything out of your SharePoint environment. You might want to keep perhaps 6 months worth of recent data within that environment, and you'll be able to leverage off those shredded storage capabilities to reduce the size of the data within that environment, what's left within your content database, where everything older than that can be offloaded, where you'll get true single instance storage. So you've got the option to have deduplication across your entire farm. So if a document exists in several locations, the same document, it'll only be offloaded and kept once on the back end on your BLOB store. But from the end user perspective, complete transparency. They will still see the document within those same several locations and have full access to that document. The user is not even aware that you're offloading that information on the back end, but your total cost of ownership around your SharePoint platform is reduced significantly.
And one of the last things that you had covered was talking about selection of vendors around this process. And obviously you're like you're a vendor that work very closely with Metalogix, you know, my company now, and but there is some sound advice, and those that are partnering with and utilize other vendor solutions that are out there. But what should a company be thinking about as they're looking at this type of solution? What are the I mean, inherently, I think of applications that work natively inside of SharePoint are better than those that cause you to go outside of the system.
Absolutely.
How does this work in that case?
Absolutely. So historically, before these APIs existed, you would have to use things like email archiving style applications to archive out of SharePoint, where information would be removed out of SharePoint and replaced with a pointer reference. And now, this only really causes complications, because when a user clicks on that piece of information, it has to go and fetch the data from an application outside of that SharePoint environment. We like to stick to the SharePoint object model. It's got to live and breathe within a SharePoint platform and be owned by the SharePoint application team. Yes, you're leveraging off infrastructure from the infrastructure team, but it's a SharePoint application.
Which allows you for other extensibility as well. So if you're getting creative, depending on what kind of shop, if you're going to go and build other solutions off there, by keeping it as part of that object model, and the relationship there, it allows you to go and build other solutions and tap into that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another couple of key areas, though, is the provider that you pick needs to meet specific criteria before you install that information or the software onto a SharePoint platform. And a few of the things that I like to touch on, it has to be a gold Microsoft ISV partner. You want to ensure that you are compatible with new versions of the software as they're released. You want Gartner presence, where they've won cool Gartner awards or rank fairly highly in the Gartner.
They're going to be around for a while.
Absolutely. And installed in Fortune 500 companies around the world and have a significant client base across the US and Europe. And this is why we use Metalogix. They just tick all the boxes.
Right. But it's one of those things where, like when you're selecting any vendor, you think about storage. Storage is going to be around a long time, so you want a vendor that is going to be, that has been around and that will be around for a long time.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great session. This is definitely a topic that enterprise deployments, as well as smaller, mid-range deployments of SharePoint, need to think about, make part of their planning process, what they're going to do with storage. And certainly RBS needs to be part of that.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
I'm going to have to start selling stuff.
Thank you.